The Women in Power Forum was organized for the first time last year, and it is offered as a platform for people to meet across age groups, across sectors, backgrounds, professions, to share stories and listen to each other, to exchange experiences, knowledge, and ideas. The Women in Power Forum is organized under the umbrella of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, and that begins today and it goes on until the 10th of December. This forum is for everyone, regardless of status, where you're from, what experiences you carry with you. We believe that we're better together. We have one exciting tool called Menti that we're using today, and we want to use this to engage you as much as possible. So we're going to have one at the beginning and one at the end. And this tool, it's going to come up a link on your screen, and Kudruca is going to share it with you in a minute. And when you see that link, you just access it and put in the code. So yes, here it is. So our question to you today is, what are the first words that come to mind when you hear the phrase women empowerment? So if you want to open a browser on your computer or open on your phone, menti.com, you use the code that is there on the screen, 6908391, and we will see your answers coming up. And it is also in the chat, the link. And we're getting some answers here, and it's looking very exciting, colorful, better together, absolutely, unleashing. So while this is going on and while you're putting in your thoughts here, I am going to share with you quickly about our moderator, Julia, and then hand it over to her. So Julia is an award-winning journalist and a reporter who used to work for the BBC for many years. She's a good friend. She used to also be the producer of BBC's Women's Hour. Some of you might have heard of that or seen that or heard that. She's currently the director and executive editor of World Watch Monitor. She's also an excellent speaker herself, and she's involved in many initiatives and projects around the world. So we're so happy to have her with us to guide us through this event today. Julia, I'm actually just going to pass it on to you now, if that's okay.
Thank you very much indeed, Camilla. And without further ado, I just want to tell you that we have an amazing lineup of women, and they've all overcome significant personal challenges to lead in their own fields. And I can't wait for us to hear from them all. We've got someone in the performing arts, someone in politics, someone in a sport that you don't often associate with women, particularly older women, and someone who's a diplomat, and finally someone in academia. So we're going to start with Elizabeth ASKREN, who joins us from Romania today. And Elizabeth, I think you're going to talk to us about the value of sisterhood. So just very quickly, I'd love to introduce us to you. You're one of the few female conductors in the world, that's orchestral conductors. You're the founder and artistic director of the Transilvanian Opera Academy, which I understand is Romania's first opera studio. And you conduct classical music and also opera. And you also work with the power of classical music for social inclusion. And you've established young artists programs in both France and Romania. And you also, as if that isn't all enough, you mentor fellow women conductors. So without further ado, we'd love to hear from you, Elizabeth.
My goodness, thank you so much for that very warm welcome. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to speak tonight about the power of inclusion, especially concerning we as women. I went to an all-girls school, and I went there for the first 14 years of my life. And this was very important because everyone was important, and there was no question as to who would do what. We knew it was a girl. So if we had a president of the class, if we had the captain of the softball team, everyone who ran track, everyone who competed in the chess or the math league, we were all women, and there was no question about it. And I think this was a very strong position to come from. And I needed that strength as I braved the uncharted waters of becoming an orchestral conductor. It is true that we are about at 4% of all the conductors out there. So 4% of us are women. And as you can imagine, this is rather kind of unheard of for some people. And you can have the craziest kind of interactions with people or questions. And you know, I got all kinds of questions or assumptions. You know, I was never the conducting assistant. I was always the personal assistant, of course. So it's hard to establish oneself as an individual, as a musician, and as a professional when you're up against coming across barriers and having to overcome hurdles and misconceptions about yourself before you even open your mouth. There are a lot of also unwanted and displaced comments that were unfortunate and kind of can destabilize you, especially as a young conductor. It's already hard enough to be a young leader and trying to work with established groups who have much more experience than you do, and yet you're supposed to be leading them. And then when you also have to kind of get over some people's prejudices or incredulity. Oh, it's not even possible to have a woman at the helm. You're much too pretty to be a conductor. I could never take you seriously if I were in the orchestra. So, you know, such comments as that. And at these moments, there's a choice to be made. And you can either choose to let that comment sink in and penetrate you and influence you, or you can refuse the comment, and you can choose what to do with the comment. You can't choose that you just heard that, but you can choose to do something positive for yourself and choose to ignore it, or be calm with the comment and say, well, that was interesting. That disturbed me. Why did that disturb me? And you can maybe learn something from the destabilization of that comment, which will better inform you going forward. So I think this is very important, because if you do not take charge of your own narrative, and you do not almost with conviction say, I will be the master of my own vessel, and you don't tell me where I get to go. I'm going to go where I need to go. It's not that I want. This is a need that I will go through my life. As I became a young mother, I made certain choices that the conducting profession might not have understood. Well, you don't want this career at all price, to sacrifice everything. And yet they were choices that resonated with myself, and I had to consider who I was in this profession, and who I was as a mother, and in the context of my family. So my personal life and my professional life, I needed to have a holistic approach to. And I also had to go against the grain a little bit in a profession which is all consuming. It really wants all of you. And I made this decision, and I stand by it. And I think I'm a better pedagogue and a better performer and a more effective and honest, I think, artist because of it, to remain true to yourself and not to go down some path which is quintessentially not for you. So to really have conviction, it's okay. It's okay if you have to take out the machete and start chopping through the jungle of life, you know. It's scary, it's an adventure, but it's all right. It's all right, because you're going to come out through it, and you're going to come out stronger for it. And I think that's what I also wanted to talk about, making these mini groups of women, you know. When I was in college, I stayed in an all-women dorm. Because it was a wonderful experience, because you can have these moments where you have a privileged moment to just talk about things. and all kinds of things that could interest you, but which maybe are not so immediate when we're in mixed company. I don't think that we should ghettoize ourselves, not at all, but I think everybody needs a point of resource. And I think the point of resource is connecting in a very nurturing way with others who can share your experience and will be receptive to that, so that you can kind of mutually strengthen yourself. And that's what I am very fortunate to be able to bring to the Dallas Opera now in their Heart Institute, which was an incredible institute and is still continuing now in its 6th year to mentor female conductors and executive directors in the performing arts, and especially in the opera sector. And now I'm one of the master teachers there. So I really think that's incredibly important, that we help each other and that we transmit with all the freedom in the world, so that we can strengthen each other and go out into the world and be really productive and significant members, armed with this strength of self-knowledge and also mutual support.
Well done. Thank you so much. I love the way that you gave yourself the alarm, the timer. That's brilliant. Thank you, Elizabeth. And obviously, if people want to ask questions, if you would put your questions that you have been prompted to think about, if you can put them into the chat box, I will be able to put those to Elizabeth and all the other speakers in about half an hour or so, maybe 25 minutes. So without any more delay, we're going to move next to Edlira Cepani, who joins us today from Albania. Welcome, Edlira. I know you've come hot from another political meeting because you work in the civic and political sector. And I know that you created a political party which has 50% women from broadly the left of the political spectrum and 50% from the right, to raise the voice of women and girls. And you said, when I first created this party, people thought it wouldn't last a month. And now it's been going for over 11 years. So we'd love to hear from you, Edlira. How do you operate as a woman in politics in Albania?
Julia, thank you very much for this introduction. Actually, it's not a party still,
okay.
An organization.
Okay.
But it's such a great organization and testimony that women in politics, despite the differences in ideals, in political parties, in different regions, in everything that they represent, they know how to come together and they know how to support each other, as Elizabeth was saying. I'm Edlira, and as Ms. Bicknell said, I lead an organization of women in politics, and I've been working with women in politics for more than a decade now. And I like the title that actually Camila put on my briefing. She said, Edlira will speak about how to empower the empowered. And thank you so much, first of all, for having this forum. And it's such a pleasure to be here among these great women and men. And it's such a beautiful thing that we are all together from different parts of the world, but sharing the same issues and sharing the possibility to encourage each other based on our life experiences. And as I said, when I say that I work for women in politics, they tell me where. Well, there are lots of other women that need to be empowered, marginalized women, violated women. Why have you chosen women in politics? They are already empowered. And the problem is that we see the numbers, and with the numbers, especially with our organization, we have achieved historical numbers in Albanian politics at present. We have achieved historical reforms, 50% quota, the highest number of women in parliament and in the local councils that we ever had since we had a parliament. So now people see it and they say it's enough. And what we say is that this is the exact moment when they need to be empowered the most and when they need to be supported the most. Why? Because although we might not think of it, as today is the first day of the global campaign of violence against women, this is the moment where violence of women in politics is most visible, and it needs to be said, and it needs to be talked about. Why? Because the increased numbers now are a matter of also increased power. So when the power comes, also the violence comes. And unfortunately, the problem with women in politics is that they are facing at the moment a backlash in their political participation, and they still experience discrimination, harassment, or assault, even assault. What are some of the types of violence against women in politics? Because we might not think of them. And as the violence of any other women in any other sector, there are persistent harassment, discrimination, threats, and psychological abuse that we see a lot, especially in the media, physical and sexual assault, even for these empowered women, economic violence, such as threatenings from their families, but also threatenings for their campaigns and their work in politics, pressuring women to leave politics, including the moment when they are elected as officials. And unfortunately, here in Albania, but I know that also in other countries, we have had many cases of this kind. And also the violence, the silent violence of media that we used to call it, because usually women in politics are asked in the media, what are they wearing? What are they doing with their family? What are they doing in their personal life? They are never asked what laws are they passing, what are their problems in politics, and these other things. And if you see, we usually do media monitoring, and if we see in the campaign, just 12% of the time dedicated for a media campaign is dedicated to women candidates. All the other time is covered by men candidates. So anytime that they tell you that all this violence that you are passing, or that women in politics are passing, it is the cost of politics, we say that it is not the cost of politics, and we will keep speaking and speaking up until all this violence ends, because we need women in politics, we need men in politics, we need them to cooperate together for better societies. And if we don't have them both, if both of their voices are not heard, we cannot have a good politics for every one of us, and not even good policies, communities, and all the rest. On the other side, as I work in the civil society, also us in our sector, we seem empowered enough not to experience any kind of violence. Of course, I'm one of the strongest voices against gender-based violence in my country, and also in the region. And it's interesting to share some personal experience. Some years ago, I was rebuilding schools and hospitals in the rural areas of Albania. I went with the driver of the organization to meet the mayor of that rural area in order to discuss the details on how to rebuild. It was a little hospital there that we gave our contribution. But you know what happened? He didn't speak to me at all. He spoke to the driver and he said, well, tell to the director that we are going to do this and this. And I answered, yes, of course, we're going to do this and this. And he continued speaking to the driver. And he said, yes, tell to your director that the problems are this and this and this. He didn't look at me, he didn't speak to me. And at the end of the day, he said to his colleagues, we knew after that, I'm not sure they're coming back because she's a lady. I'm not sure she's strong enough to do this kind of work and to rebuild an hospital for us. I'm sure that another organization with a man leader will come and they will do it better. What did I do? Of course, I came back the other day, and I came back for 3 other months, and we rebuilt the hospital. we were persistent in what we wanted to do. And at the end of the 3 months, the mayor invited me for a coffee. And he said, I'm sorry if I didn't trust you, if I didn't speak even to you, but now we are friends and you can ask me whatever you want for the future and I'm open for cooperation. And I said, I'm not going to ask anything about myself, but if you want the work done, you need to have some more women in your staff, because 50-50 of good ideas and of good contribution is very important also for your area. So what we have learned in our work and in many experiences like this that sound like anecdotes, but they're real lived experiences, is that we need to persist in asking our rights. Some will think that it is something that we just want. Some other will think that we're asking too much. Some others will think that we are asking things that are not possible. Everything that is rights for women and girls is a human right. So we need to persist asking them until we achieve everything that we are free to want and to be in our lives without being violated and without being discriminated. And this is my call: persist, 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 because the change might seem, in many areas of the world, might seem difficult, might seem even impossible. But as we did it in Albania, as we did it in Albanian politics, in Albanian rural areas, in every part of society, we can do it everywhere. And we need to support each other with best practices and best experiences, and with good networking to strengthen each other, to empower each other. And never forget that when we are more, our voice is heard more. So let's speak up for our rights and let's persist on them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edlira. That's wonderful. So our next speaker, we're going to change a little bit. We're going to move to the Netherlands because Anita Bakenes-Kok is there and she is breaking the barriers and pursuing her passions. Anita, I know that you're a mum of 3, a grandmother of 1, and in your early 50s, you're still living your dream. Now, I'm a very keen cyclist. I've been cycling since I was a teenager and I cycle all over London, but you're a slightly different kind of cyclist. So would you like to tell us about your passion and how you got into it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I want to speak about my sport. It's a beautiful forum, first of all, to speak at the Women Empower Forum. I think that women needs to fight for what they are worth. And I do that in my sport BMX, meaning bicycle motocross. But first of all, I will introduce myself. I'm also 51 years old, and I live in the Netherlands. And I have a problem hearing, and therefore I need hearing aids. This is the reason why I sometimes need more time to understand what someone says before I can reply to a question. I am married over 30 years with Dries. Together we've raised 3 kids, 1 daughter and 2 sons. The son still lives at home, and I am proud to say that I am a grandmother of a girl of 3 years. My husband and I have another hobby, or 2 little lap doggies, 2 Saint Bernards. And we have also our company in our Volvo business. This is what we do for daily living. It all started as a hobby of my husband to restore classic Volvos, and turned out to be a full-time job. We are so happy and lucky that our company became a family business. We will employ our daughter, our son, and my brother. 2 years ago, I diagnosed it with breast cancer. And after a long period of treatments, I can say now that I recovered from this horrible disease. I fought very hard and to get on my bike, and that's my passion, and that's also my power. I will tell you how it started. When I was a little kid, my parents normal bikes, race bikes, and BMX bikes. And in 1982, my father has founded a BMX club with other enthusiastic people. And BMX was an upcoming sport at the time. And I really liked that sport. And I asked if I could try it. But my father didn't like this idea. He thought, and my little sister, who was more restless and much more aggressive, she had an aggressive character, was allowed to exercise it. So I was really jealous, you can imagine that. But after a long time of begging and complaining, my dad gave in and I could exercise the BMX sport. In September 1982, I started exercising. And so I was so happy with it and I had so much fun. It was great to reach my goal to start BMX. I was very successful and qualified myself for the World Championship. But I was not allowed to travel alone because of my age. I was only 15 years old. And unfortunately, my dad passed away at that time. By working hard, I get my mom supported to continue my sport. This sport has the appearance of a children's sport, but nowadays it's a sport for grown-ups and adults. And for some reason, I quit at 16. And after a long break, I started again exercising when I turned 40 years. You saw it was to introduce you to the BMX sport, so you can see what I do for my sport. My purpose is to take away the prejudices of this sport, to motivate women to choose for themselves, follow their dream and to go for it. Unfortunately, there were just a few women in my age to participating in a competition at the BMX sport. Most of the women think it's a dangerous sport, which is partially correct. It's an extreme sport and with more chances for injuries, but with lots of training and right focus and concentration, for 99%, nothing happened. I felt many times too, but I got up and carried on, and it's just a part of the sport. You just go on. Most important of it all, I think, even men can do this sport without exercising. People think it's an easy sport, but you must see the fear in their eyes when they hit the starting gate. Also, they are thinking just a few little hills on the track. We cannot take it easily, but that's not true. You have to exercise it. Every child, every man and every woman. And people think I'm too old for this sport. But honest, I don't care what other people think. This is my power and I'm proud to be the oldest woman and the only grandmother in this sport in the Netherlands. I have so much for the time being and I do not quit the sport because people think I'm too old. because there are a few very little women who join the BMX sport, I'm classified with men of 40 years and older. But that won't stop me from racing competitions. I think I can do that with a lot of fun, no matter how I finish in the race. Fun has to be the most important thing, and you have also feel comfortable with your sport. And people think I'll lose a competition against men couldn't be more wrong. Often people think women are less strong than men, but women can be stronger. But that's not my idea of a competition. I go for the best results, but making fun is more important to me. Meanwhile, my granddaughter loves the sport and very much, and we spend spend time together on the track, so you can see. I learned to fight for my dreams up to the present day. I found out at an age of 13, a teenage girl, that when you want something, you have to follow your dreams. I did it back then by begging my dad to allow me for exercising the BMX sport. And now today I race competition on the track despite the prejudices. And even after 8 weeks, just after having my surgery for breast cancer, I participated in the next race. 9 months later, last year, 2019, I became second in the European Championship. Yes, I'm a go-getter and I don't give up. Now these days, I can't race because of the COVID-19 virus. Unfortunately, the whole world suffers with it. But I will not give up my dream, that it's cycling. I started mountain biking, which gives me a lot of satisfaction. And I started cycling on my racing bike as well. So I take care of myself. I'm also very lucky to live in the Netherlands. I realized that the Netherlands is further developed than many other countries, and here are more chances for a woman to do what they want to do. It's less strange for a woman to do your own thing. I think a lot of countries can learn from that. Besides taking care of my family, I am also lucky because I received the support of my husband and my kids to do my own thing. They support me by walking my St. Bernard, and they give me the freedom to participate in competitions and to train every week at the I train 3 times a week at the competitions. My husband is always there. What I would like to say to women and girls is that's very important to take care of herself. I think when you do something that you like, you'll be a better person, a better mother, a better wife, and a better employee. Besides my work, being a wife and a mother, I am me, and I choose for myself. So what I want to say, don't give up, girls and women, go for it and get the best out of yourself, and you're worth it. What I want to let you see is my helmet. I'm wearing it on my competitions. I'm very glad with it. And you need to protect yourself by a body protector. I don't wear it right now. And you need wear gloves. So you're protected. You're protected by yourself. And woman has to take care of themselves. I do it in my sport. And every woman has to go for their own thing.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful, Anita. I'm really impressed, and I look forward one day maybe even getting to see you on the track. Great. Now we're going to move to the USA, and we're going to be hearing from Nancy Ostrowski. And Nancy is a diplomat, and she at the moment is working, as I understand, as USAID Deputy Development Advisor at the Pentagon. And a quick reminder that Nancy is not here to talk about USA politics, because she's here in a private capacity and she's going to share with us her personal experiences. So thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind introduction and for the opportunity to join such an inspiring panel. With each speaker, I've just been blown away. Some of you may think that the woman sitting in front of you right now is 50 years old, which in a sense is accurate. My physical shell is definitely 50, as my various aches and pains can begin to attest to. I'm definitely no Anita. Anita, you're amazing. But the person that I am today actually emerged from the wreckage of a massive disaster 19 years ago, the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center. The woman who woke up that morning was a different woman who sits before you now. She was outwardly successful 30-year-old, someone who had spearheaded industry studies, presented to Congress, and traveled to almost 30 countries. She lived in the right postal code in a part of the US that cared about those things. She met and socialized with famous people and celebrities, etc. And yet she was empty. It took the events of that day for her to realize, when she was caught barefoot and in a glass-covered city, drowning in smoke, that until that moment she had not really lived. And worse, not really ever done anything to help anyone else or to make a permanent mark on the world. As she tried to make her way to safety, without shoes, without a cell phone, identification, or even any money, there was a point that was so overwhelming, so terrible, that she had to make a choice. Do I succumb to the situation, or do I just put down the panic that I'm feeling right now and survive? She chose to survive, pushing down the tears that she knew would sweep away her control of the situation. And survive she did. To live another day, to love another day, to succeed another day, to fail on many other days and in many other fashions. But the story doesn't really end there. You see, those are not the only two choices in life, to either succumb or to survive. There is a third choice, featured by some of our other speakers here today. The third choice is one that takes time and constant practice, and that is the choice to prevail. I know we have an international audience here, so I'll give you my definition of the word prevail. To prevail is to prove more powerful than opposing forces, to be victorious. When you're in the middle of a terror attack, the opposing forces are obvious. The same is true for things like a natural disaster or a bad health diagnosis like cancer. Sadly, those types of events are often what it takes for a person to ask, what am I doing with my life and how can I do better? But I'm here to tell you that what this 19-year-old has learned is that finding the strength to survive a big opposing force or for a dramatic event is actually not the hardest thing. Rather, it is recognizing and defeating these opposing forces in our daily lives. You may never experience a 9/11 type of event in your life, but you shouldn't fail to recognize that the impact of these opposing forces in our daily lives, nor be afraid to conquer them. But it can be hard. I still fail at them frequently. These opposing forces apply regardless of gender. And I believe that as women, many of these are of our own construction. And I'm going to go through a list of them now. First is a desire to please, often in the form of living the life our parents would choose us to live, to make them proud, even if it doesn't fulfill us directly. Two is a desire to live up to the ideals of others. For women, this is almost always physical, or includes a physical element, but also intellectual and spiritual. We must be the perfect union of Madonna and whore. And during COVID, cook, housekeeper, homeschool teacher, teleworking employee. Third, a desire to keep the peace. We often don't want to confront the person who made that inappropriate comment, who's making us uncomfortable in the workplace, perhaps on a daily basis. or questioning why, if we have the qualifications, we are not receiving the same consideration as perhaps a less qualified man. This also ties into the previous one. We don't want to be that woman who raised the issue, who reported someone, who is seen as pushy. Fourth, we have the fear of failure. This one is easy. It speaks directly to the first two, as well as to our own desire to be proud of ourselves so that we like the person we see in the mirror every day. Fifth, fear of success. You heard that right. Fear of success. One of my favorite authors, Paulo Coelho, with whom I had the great pleasure of meeting while I was writing my first book, speaks with great truth about the fear of success and how it's often greater than fear of failure. Because what if that success that you're striving for isn't what you thought it would be? When I'm invited to speak at events like these, it is often because of my ability to overcome an opposing force of such a major scale. And not long after surviving the terror attacks, I made some major changes in my life to transform my life, selling everything I owned, to travel the world, building bridges in rainforests, and working on wildlife reserves in Africa. So many people who heard my stories afterwards loved it so much that I had to write a book telling others how to do it. But I'm here to tell you that in the past 19 years, I'm prouder of what I've done since then, because it was actually, in a way, harder. Things like when I traveled halfway around the world to brazenly ask a famous author to endorse my first book, which he did, or starting a new career at 40 at the bottom of the ladder as a junior officer, or leaving a toxic relationship, even though it meant getting divorced a second time and facing all of that judgment. Or later, questioning leadership when they told me I didn't qualify for a prestigious appointment, even though I had all of the qualifications on paper. I got it. Or, and this is a big one, learning to recognize and shut down inappropriate behavior in a professional setting without agonizing over it. Why should I agonize more about it than the person engaged in the harmful behavior? Like any 19-year-old, I am still learning, sometimes from women much, much younger than me. Some who are older, like my sister, who after a lifetime of adversity and challenges has adopted a motto of one life per customer. Women who stand up for themselves, who live for themselves, fight for themselves. When some people hear about my 9/11 experiences, their first reaction is often to say, "I'm sorry you had to go through that." Well, I'm not. I'm sorry it happened. Many lives were lost, but I'm not sorry I was there. Without it, I might not have the courage to overcome the multitude of tiny opposing forces that I and you and other women face each day. Thank you again for this opportunity. May you also be victorious in your daily lives.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That was great. Now, last but not least, we're going to hear from Kate D. And Kate is one of the main organisers of this forum. And she's also an academic practitioner with a double PhD in human rights and migration. And so we're really interested to hear her speak about being a woman in the academic world. Over to you, Kate.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and good morning for those of you who are not in our part of the world. I'm so happy and so honored to be part of the amazing list of speakers for this event and to have worked with such a great organizing team. So I just wanted to start off my small intervention with that. Women in academia. I want to say that before I introduce myself, because you will hear about it when I start this story, women in academia, the very first thing that someone would normally see about us would be our CV, actually, very, very frankly. In academia, usually you would have a student or a researcher or a co-professor, and they would be searching you up. And of course, the first thing that they would see would be your university profile or multiple university profiles if you've been in academia for a while. And then they would end up with your 5 to 15 page CV, depending on how ambitious you are with that document. And I mean, CVs are always beautifully crafted things because they show the world the best of you. So all of your achievements, all of your academic degrees, how much money have you gotten in terms of grants from governments and from private institutions? Um, my CV, for example, is a work of art. I say this now. If you look at it, you will see, for example, that in 2008, I had just graduated my bachelor's degree, and I was retained by the university as one of the top 3 of the graduating class to teach at the university. In 2010, 2 years later, I was awarded an Australian Leadership Award from the Australian government to do a double master's in international relations and diplomacy. In 2013, again, 2 years later, it was the start of the year, I got a notification from the European Commission that they would be awarding me a joint PhD program and fully fund me for the next 3 years. And indeed, at the end of those 3 years, after going through Rome and Brussels, I got the PhD. So it was 2017, and I think it is one of my profiles. I think it is actually my Belgian profile that very specifically says, Kate defended her first PhD in Brussels at 36 weeks pregnant. She gave birth and then defended her second PhD in Rome with a 2-month-old. We are so proud of Kate. And I'm like, that's actually factually correct. And that's really, really great. But then it's only the nice things. It's only the good things that you see in a CV. And what you don't see, for example, is in 2009, I was just 6 months into teaching at university. We were having an amazing discussion with my class. My students were pretty much my age. If you can imagine finishing bachelor's and then teaching bachelor students, that's a challenge, a different challenge. And we were having a great discussion, and I didn't realize that we had gone over time. And in a university setting, you share the room. So like after your class is done, another professor comes in with their class and so forth. I didn't notice this. And what the other professor did, a more senior male professor from my department, is he just barged in, put his suitcase on my table with a bang, and verbally harassed me in front of my class, asking, "Where is the respect? Why don't you leave your room? Let these students go." And my students they didn't know what to say. And I, as a junior faculty member, 6 months into my tenure, I didn't know what to say either. So I apologized and we left. And we made sure, that class made sure that we always ended 5 minutes before our actual time should end, just to make sure that we never ended in that kind of encounter again. I mentioned as well in 2010, and this was a difficult one, again, as a relatively junior faculty, I was at a conference, a really great conference actually on leadership in academia. And at the end of that conference, we all went back to our hotel because it was an outside conference. And one of the senior academics, a man, tried to corner me by the elevator and told me that he preferred if we take the staircase. I don't need to elaborate on what that means, but I was extremely uncomfortable. I was very, very young, in my early 20s. And here was this senior academic who was married with kids, I'm very sure at that time, using his power and privilege to do this. I reported it to the academic committee afterwards. They did nothing. This is not a surprise to anyone. Then I discussed with my friends and I realized that I was not the first one that this was attempted with, and probably was not the last. But at that point, you report it to the actual authorities. What else can you do if they take no action? And I was honestly far too young to think about, other options. Now I am older, and if I see it happening with someone junior, I know to step in. But at that point, I really didn't. I also wanted to give the example of, and this is just in general in academia, that even if you see someone with a beautiful CV, you don't see the challenges that person faces. One of the examples, and this is also one of the research that a very good friend of mine is doing, is the divorce rate in academia. Because you can imagine, as an academic, you need to be very, very mobile. Between 2010 and 2020, this year, we have moved over 7 times. Australia to Europe, all across Europe. I'm now currently in Transylvania, in Romania, so we're really going all over the place. And on the one hand, moving itself is already a challenge because it's really exciting. I agree, and I do not dispute this. But then you uproot your entire life. You need to open new bank accounts, find a new apartment, find a grocery that sells decent peanut butter, like really simple things. And tampons. Not all countries have tampons. You'd be surprised. These small things, but if you have to do it year after year after year, it weighs on you. Now imagine adding a relationship onto that. Because if you're single and you move around, that's an adventure. If you are in some kind of partnership or a marriage and you need to leave your country every year to 18 months, well, if you're in a relationship with someone in the private sector or in some kind of NGO, that means that person before COVID had to quit their job every couple of years, which is a huge detriment to their career. Even worse, though, if you're in a relationship with a fellow academic, there's no guarantee that you'll actually be in the same country in the same year. One of my amazing mentors, and I won't mention her by name because I didn't ask permission, she has been married to her husband for the past 10 years. They have 3 kids, all born in different countries. And for the past 10 years, she and her husband, both academics, have never had the same position. So at one point, he was in Germany and she was in the Netherlands. At one point, she was in France and he was in Japan. It was terrible. But now they are together in a university. So actually, that story had a happy ending. For many, it doesn't. I give you an example as well. You know, 2017 is always the year that's highlighted in any biography for me because it was the year that I finished my PhDs and made a human. So these two things, I believe, deserve some kind of recognition. But 2017 was also the year that I became unemployed because at the end of my doctoral contract, there is no money. I mean, if you're not doing research, what are you doing? Nothing. My husband was also unemployed because he had moved 3 times to follow me around in my academic career. And it's not that easy to get a new job. We were in Brussels. He did not speak French or Dutch. So that's a challenge. And we had a baby. So 2017, we were struggling to make ends meet. I had no right to, what do you call it, unemployment. Because as a doctoral student, 1, you're a student, and 2, you're not actually technically employed. It's a long story. So I had no unemployment, and we were receiving around 83 euros per month as child allowance from the Belgian government. Consider that our rent was around 1,600, so 1,600 euros. Food was around 500 euros. Diapers, 200 euros. And then other essentials like mobile phone, internet, water, electricity, another 200 euros. Deduct that from 83 euros for many, many months. It was in 2017 that I learned the skill of getting half a kilo of pork loin and making that last 9 dinners. It's magical, probably biblical, even though maybe I should not say this in this way, but we managed to do it. It was also in 2017 that at one point, it was at the end of the year, we were so low on resources that even buying a bottle of Coke, we had to think about it seriously. Like, is this bottle of Coke worth it? And it was really, really hard. Camilla actually knows that at one point, we had 5 euros in our bank account. And that was very difficult for us. We were extremely lucky that our parents stepped in. Of course, they would, but it should not have been their responsibility. And many other academics in this situation do not have that kind of safety net. Yeah, so
Thank
shiny,
you.
shiny academically, but really not. I wanted to end on a happy note, though, not with depressing financial problems in academia, sexual harassment in hotels, and problematic older colleagues. Just to end on a happy note, I'm extremely grateful for all of the mentors that I've met along the way, men and women. But I want to say a especially the women, because they understand the kind of sacrifices that we as women have to make to have this kind of career. And especially with kids, the sacrifices we agree to as female academics, knowing that our kids will not be raised with any kind of stability. So I try to be that now. I'm kind of, let's say, early career, still mid-career, but I am so proud that the students that I taught in 2008 to 2010, many of them now have PhDs as well. Many of them are now starting off with their career. So I think it's this that we have to do. We have to keep on supporting each other, no matter what gender. By the way, my students are the entire spectrum of genders. And yeah, just to keep doing this, staying strong, helping each other through, and knowing that we're not alone. It's not just us who experience these things.
Thank you so much, Kate. That's great. And I can see some people applauding you there. So now we're going to turn to questions. And if you've joined us since we started, just a reminder, you can put questions into the chat box, into the chat, that little icon at the bottom of your screen with a kind of like a text, words coming out of your mouth kind of icon. I want to ask you, I was hearing an amazing woman speaking yesterday about imposter syndrome. Now, I know that both men and women both suffer from imposter syndrome, but I wonder if our panelists could say whether they think that we as women suffer from it worse than men. What do you all think?
Yes.
Perhaps start with, who was that? Elizabeth. Okay, let's start with you. I'm not saying, by the way, before we get into the questions, I'm not saying that everyone has to answer every, you know, we don't have to go around 5 people answering each question. So it would help me if you put up your little hand reaction if you particularly want to answer this particular question. Okay, do you all know where to find the reaction, the smiley face along? Yeah. So Elizabeth, do you want to pick up a bit, and then if anyone else of the 5 wants to jump in with something, please let me know. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that is totally right on the money. I think that we tend to look at ourselves in a more critical light. I think we demand more of ourselves. I think we also are, there have been studies done actually to show that women will not put themselves in a position where they find that they are exposed or vulnerable as men will. Men, even boys in a classroom, they'll hold up their hand and they don't know what they're going to say, but that's okay. So this really translates into our professional lives. And I have come to embrace, because I am totally perfectionist. I love to get everything together. It's kind of like packing the parachute before you jump out of the plane. But now I have embraced the DOS, the dirty operating system. Might not be clean, might not be perfect, but it's good enough. So get out the door and do it, and you'll figure it out on the way.
Have you ever come a cropper though, when you did try and then you sort of felt a failure because you did that DOS?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? Yes. And it was one of the hardest things professionally, of course, that I had to go through, and yet one of the most formative. I was a young conductor, but it wasn't quite my fault. A young conductor, the real conductor who was supposed to do this project bailed at the last minute. And I thought that I had done my work enough to step into his shoes. And indeed, I was not prepared enough. And the orchestra, which was kind of the creme de la creme of Europe, let me know it. And I had to go after a rehearsal. I would keep it together. It was like being in a boxing ring and taking psychological, hits during each rehearsal. And I would go back into my room. I would cry. I would take out the score. I would let the tears fall on the score to try to get even more prepared, know that that was not enough, dry off my eyes, get back in there and take it again. But that was, as painful as it was, it taught me what I needed to do in order to be truly prepared. And I haven't had something like that happen to me since. So.
Great. Okay, another question, if no one else wants to jump in on that one. Do you think that we have already achieved gender equality? I mean, I remember when I started out in my career, for instance, there were no women correspondents at all on the BBC. Now you hear women correspondents all the time. So do you think that we've already achieved equality and basically we should just stop whinging and we're pushing too much now? Who would like to answer that one? I'm going to jump on Edlira if no one else has got something specific. Edlira.
Yes, I was going to answer anyway. This is a question that they ask me in the parliament a lot whenever I go for electoral reforms to ask for more women in politics. They tell me, "Are you never happy? Like we achieved the 50% quota in local elections, 1/3 in parliamentary elections. What do you want more?" And I think that we're not there yet. As long as we have so great, inspiring experiences like this that we heard, but that shouldn't really happen because of our gender. We should be all free to choose our path and feel not discriminated in the workplace, in our lives, in our families, should not be part of gender roles and gender stereotypes that impede us from being ourselves in order to walk in our daily lives path. And it's so great to hear that, it's interesting to say this, but it's so great to hear that we have kind of the same problems in every sector and in every country. Because sometimes it seems like it happens only to us and it's because of us. And sometimes we feel discriminated and we feel weak, we feel without energy. And we think it's because of the things that we do, and it's because the things that we don't really do well. And hearing that everybody has the same problems, and in different fields, they might seem different, but in the basis, they're all the same. This inspires me to ask for more. And as I said, I will never stop persisting until we achieve the total freedom and the total real equality, not only in numbers, but in the real life, that we might be who we want to be, and we might live our lives like we want, without any gender equality borders.
Okay, thank you very much.
Until we achieve that for every little girl that has a dream, we have not achieved yet the real gender equality.
Thank you. So Kudrytsa, who's one of our organizers here, she has asked if one of you would like to answer, what can we, ordinary women, in other words, all of us on the call, what can we do to support women's empowerment, particularly, and especially to stop gender violence? Are there very specific things that each one of us could do to actually try and really stop this gender-based violence that we're hearing has increased very much during the COVID-19 pandemic, when so many women are basically locked in with their abusers? Who would like to go for that one? I can see Kate nodding, so I'm going to go for you, Kate. Oh, no, not you.
Sure. Just that one of the basic things that by the way, we're all ordinary women, except for Liviu, who I believe is man. So just to say that one of the basic things that we can do is really just check in with each other. I was introduced as an academic practitioner, and indeed my practitioner side is actually helping migrant women, especially here in Romania, and especially with COVID, many of them are stuck in abusive situations, physically abusive, especially emotionally abusive. And because Romania, just to give a very quick rundown, is in the EU, but is not in Schengen. And also because of COVID, they are literally stuck in this country with their abuser. And if they leave their abuser, they have nowhere to go to. The system is not ready for them. It's barely ready for Romanian domestic violence victims, and they cannot leave the country. So one of the things that we can do is just a simple question: are you okay? How are you doing? Even just, have you eaten? In Filipino, this is the way we greet each other: have you eaten? And that simple question will automatically, if they're having a problem, they know that you're there because you want to ask about it. And then if you are in some kind of position to help, not necessarily an expert, but like I know now many people in IOM and in other organizations, then you can. And this is just one way that we could try to help.
Anyone else want to jump on that one? If not, we'll move to another of our questions from one of our participants, Katrin Schultz. Katrin asks, do you have a trick for keeping it together in situations, say, where you're overwhelmed with emotions, perhaps in a meeting, and you feel like crying? As women, we're always seen as emotional, so not crying in front of everyone in a meeting is a top priority. What do you do? So Nancy, I'm going to jump on you simply because I haven't asked you a question yet. Is there anything particularly you would want to respond on this one?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. And it's definitely something that I can relate to, because I tend to, when I'm put in a situation like that and I'm angry, that's what usually prompts my crying response. And then I get even angrier at myself because I'm coming across as weak by crying, but I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm so angry and I have all this emotion that I don't know what to do with it. So it's coming out as tears. So 2 tricks that have worked for me in the past, and depending on the situation, might work for you. One is try to remove yourself mentally, like rather than being Nancy having this argument with this person, try to look at it like from above, right? Like you're watching these characters on TV, and just make it about the interaction and what is being said, trying to depersonalize it from like try to step out of your body and see it from a third perspective, if you will, if that makes sense. That's something that also requires practice. Another one is, and if you're not able to do that, and this is maybe even harder, but you can try to find the vulnerability in the person that's asking the question. And I'm not saying so you can pounce on it, but so that you can actually, it's a great opportunity for you to exercise your empathy or your compassion for that person. Because a lot of times things that are said in anger, I'll quote my sister for the second time today. She another saying that she has is that hurt people hurt people. And so, learning from that, thinking about this person is saying this in this way, what can be prompting them to have said it in this fashion, and just trying to, again, depersonalize it from the person. So either removing yourself or from the situation, being a third party, or trying to figure out in that moment, and that's if you have some skill with empathy, figuring out what's prompting them to act in that way, because it's probably, many times, sometimes it is, but many times it's not actually intended in the spirit in which you received it. So those are 2 things that can be helpful, but I will say it is a very good question, something I continue to struggle with.
Great, thanks, Nancy. So now we've got another question from Christian Moldovan to everyone, he's saying. I don't know whether we are going to have time to have everyone answer, but I particularly want to ask you, Anita, what are the best ways and practices to involve men in empowering women? So you talked very well about how you are very much involved with your husband and your family, that you work with them, they support you. So what are the best ways and practices to involve men in empowering women?
I think you have to talk with men. You have to get them support by taking them with you to the BMX track in my case, and let them see what's meaning for a training, practicing, what is the what he can see I am happy with doing my thing. So a good man, when he sees when his wife is happy, he is happy too. There are many people normally, and he could talk. He can social meeting is there for the men. So I can take them with me to my sport. I can talk about it at home. They see what I am doing when I'm training and practicing. So they can feel what I am doing, and they see what I am doing to get my results. They are seeing that I am happy. So he must think, men must think it has to be something that is enjoyable. So they understand what I mean by having my own thing and everyone is happy. I think that men, you have to involve them, to take them with you so they can see what are you doing.
Thank you. That's great, Anita. I agree. I think you have to not be shy and scared to talk about what your passions are and why these things are so important to you. So now I'm watching the clock. We're going to finish in very shortly at the half hour. So I am now going to ask our panelists one by one, and we'll go in the order that you spoke in the first part. So if you want to add anything that you want to respond to that last question or final thoughts. So Elizabeth, starting with you.
Yeah, I would like to say, I think the biggest takeaway, especially during 2020 and this terribly difficult time for us all, is to remember that you are not alone. I think that during these moments where you're suffering, you can really feel as if you're the only one, that you're isolated. But, you know, think of an apartment building. Although you have your own apartment, you have someone just above you, just below you, and just right next door. And all you have to do is knock. So just remember that we're really a cohesive society, and that help and friendship is everywhere. You just need to go out and knock.
Great, thank you very much. And now to you, Edlira.
I would like to use my final remark to answer some of the questions that were in the chat. I think that involving men is very important, because if we want a better society, we need to work together. And I always say that the fight of gender equality is not a fight of only for women. It's also for men, and it's also with men. And we have a saying in Albania, we are considered as the country of eagles. And we always say one thing, that an eagle cannot fly only with one wing. It needs two wings to fly, so we need to be together. And there are so many men that support gender equality, that support women. We have Livio here that is so great, that has been part of the organization. I have a great husband at home that supports my activity, a great son, a great brother, a great father, and so many good friends and cooperators that support gender equality and women in general. So we are not alone, and we should do this together. On the other side, what I want to say to all of you is that sometimes we might feel that we do not have the support, even from the other question, even from other women that believe that in patriarchy, that do not believe in gender equality, and that, you know, even psychologically violate us. And they have their right to have their own opinions. What we need to do is to be, as much as we can, the voice of those women and girls that do not have a voice. And there are so many around us. We just need to listen to them, and we need to talk for them if they cannot talk, and we need to be together, like supporting each other. We can achieve very big things. And this is not a quote. This is a thing that we have experienced in our work and in our daily life, day by day. The more we are, the more we support each other, the more we achieve. Like in this forum that we are listening to each other, and this is a very good first step. Let's support each other in the future, and let us, you know, believe that every dream can come true, also the dream of gender equality.
Thank you very much, Edlira. And now to you, Anita.
Thank you. I really like to say to women that no matter what other people said, you are worth it to be yourself and what you do. And you have to get the best out of yourself. No one else will do that for you. And be strong, be proud, go for it.
Thank you very much. And Nancy.
Speaker.
Thank you. Nancy.
Well, I wanted to use this time to thank my fellow panelists for being so amazing, inspiring me, to add on to Edlira's comments too about gender equality not being just something for women to fight for. I'm proud to say that because of this forum and the participation, my Army officer husband has asked me to make a similar presentation to his military unit, actually focused on women and these challenges. So that's great. And finally, just in closing, you know, just as a challenge for us as women, that just as we don't want to be judged by our outer shells, let's vow to not do the same, you know, to the men in our lives, to others. Let's try and just make this about our common humanity and seeing the best in the others and giving the opportunity to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Kate.
Thank you. I wanted to end with a reminder to everyone to be kind to yourselves as well. We are worth so much more than our successes, and we're still worth it even when we're not productive or when we're unemployed. Our bank account is not a reflection of how much we are worth. So I want just to remind everyone that we deserve to be celebrated. It doesn't matter what the achievements are. Definitely the achievements should be celebrated, but everyone as an individual should be celebrated as well. And especially with COVID, be kind to yourself. You don't need to do everything. You know, let something slide. Don't clean the house. It's going to be fine.
Hey, I'm going to show you my little fridge magnet here. It's not quite fridge because it's on. Can you see that, everyone? Yeah, that's my motto. Okay, so finally, we're going to come to, I know we're going to have one more question on the Menti survey. And Camilla, I also will just give you a gentle reminder that you're going to do a roundup of thanks for everyone who's helped to make this the success that it's been. So over to you, Camilla.
Thank you so much, Julia. And thank you to all our amazing panelists and organizers and participants and everyone. I now want you to go to menti.com again, like you did at the beginning, and type in the code that you see there. It is 8847511. And the link is also in the chat. So you can just press that link there if you see it. And we're gonna see what comes up here as we do our little brainstorming word cloud celebration of what we have really taken with us today. And while we're doing this, like you said, Julia, I do really appreciate each and every single one who is here. We could obviously not do this without you, and it would be worthless without all the participants. So we really appreciate you being part of this. And as it comes up here, we are not alone. Believe in yourself. Kindness goes a long way, for sure. And for sure, we are all worthy. I love this. So I am personally so encouraged and humble from having been part of this. We had a very good, hardworking few months to prepare for this event, and we're very happy to have come so far, and we hope we're going to do it again. So it's been a real collaboration between organizations doing this. We have had Liviu, Luminitsa, and myself from Polylogos. We have had Juliana Poca as an amazing event manager. We have had Kate from the University in Brussels. We have had, who's also a speaker, Anna Bo, who's the president of the Cluj International Women's Club, and Claudia and Alessia, who work at Patrir, the Peace Action Training and Research Institute of Romania. And it's been such a wonderful celebration. We also had 2 sponsors to help us a little bit along the way, Campeador Group and Guest Boutique. and we're very grateful to them as well. But really, most of all, I am just super proud and grateful to our dear speakers, our moderator, Julia. Thank you for such an excellent job with guiding us through this, and to all of you participants. How to empower the empowered, how to celebrate life, how to love ourselves. This has been truly a celebration, so thank you. And we will follow up with you with an email with a little survey to see what you thought about this, what we can improve, and we really hope you're going to take the time to answer that, because it really helps us as we plan our next one, which we hope you will also want to take part in. Thank you so much, everyone.